Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Kat. It is a gorgeous day where I am today. The skies are blue, blue, blue with, well, I think they're starting to spray though with chemtrails. Yeah, not too sure they're chemtrails anymore. I heard they're supposed to have good stuff in it to help heal us, but we won't know that probably for a while. But it's gorgeous outside. And I just want to see and check in how everyone is feeling energetically. Wow, we have these solar storms that are hitting us right now. And man, yesterday was a huge day for me. I actually woke up because I had to get up for work at 4 a.m. I'm not a morning person, so I hate getting up at that early in the morning. I'm just not there. So I got up at 4 a.m. They turned our power off right at 4 a.m. Because they're working on some electrical poles down our road. So I had to get ready in the complete darkness with a flashlight. So that was fun. That was fun trying to put on my makeup with a flashlight. So that was an experience. Probably would have been better if I lit a candle. But anyway, and then I got to work. Well, actually, while I was getting ready, I got a bloody nose. So solar flares, when they hit us like that, I always get bloody noses. There's just something about that energy. So I had a bloody nose in the morning. Thank God it wasn't that bad because they can get really bad. And then I went to work, and probably about an hour and a half before I got off work, I got a migraine at work. And so I started to get that bright light in my eye, and I had to go take my pill and sit in the back for like 20, 25 minutes until it kicked in. Thank God another one didn't come on, but man, just that one pill, it like really put me out, and I just felt really drugged. And I was just, the energy yesterday was so heavy, like so heavy. Like a lot of people were feeling that yesterday. Today is April 6th, 2022. So yesterday was the 5th. I always feel like anytime those flares are supposed to hit us, I feel like it hits me like a day before, pretty much. So I don't know if any of you, any of my people who watch me, I don't know if you are feeling those really strong, heavy energies right now. I've felt like in the past few days, like we've had this sort of a timeline shift again. I've just felt the energy changing. So I don't know if anyone else has felt that or not. Today, I'm going to go over, I usually don't do Alex Collier's question and answer webinars, but this time I'm going to do one because he has had a lot of good questions, and he had a lot of really good information for people. So this is probably going to be at least an hour long again. So this is from his question and answer webinar on his Brighteon channel from March 25th of 2022. So let's get into it. The first question was, I was listening to a 2010 lecture you did. I remember hearing something about the actual process or moment of ascension, for I believe you said it would be a moment of shock. Would you mind elaborating on this? And Alex's answer, he says 2010, he says, that was, I think, Awaken Aware conference. He said the only one I did then. He said, I can't recall all the years blend together now. Don't they? All of our years, like especially the last few months, have just kind of all blended together. I can't even recall like what I did a few days ago. It's just, yeah, it's weird. He says, I don't know that I can elaborate more on that. He said, but primarily what it's going to be, to my understanding, is that literally we are here, basically one moment, and the next moment we're somewhere else. He says, now the shock is the transition from 3 to 4 and then into 5 density. He said, it is not that when you're there, you walk into 4th or 5th, you're not going to have a clue. It's not like that at all, because we've fallen into time, he said. And one of the questions from last week was, are all beings from the future? Because he talked about us coming back from the future, coming back here. So someone asked, this is part of this question, but he brought it up again, are all beings from the future? And the response is yes. That is in fact, we are all from the future. So you will know, you will have a recognition, a cognizant, oh yeah, because in order to get into 4th, your 3rd strand of DNA needs to be on. That's kind of what's happening to everyone at this point. So you're going to have the recognition, the memories. He says you're going to be like, wow, I haven't been in this neighborhood in 30 lifetimes. And he laughs, or something to that effect. I've noticed lately too, with me, and not just me, but hearing other people, like, you're having a hard time spelling words. Like when I'm writing things out, I'm like, oh my God, how do you spell that? Like simple words, you think, I'm like, that just looks wrong. Like I'm having a trouble spelling things out. I'm having a trouble like talking. I know this is, people talking lately, or at least the last few years. Yeah, things just are getting jumbled, I guess. So I don't know if any of you are experiencing that too, where like our writing and our language is kind of changing. It's just being kind of jumbled. He says that's what it's going to be like, and you'll know, and the more likely you will meet souls members of your soul group who had the common sense not to come here to Earth in 3D in the first place. They're on the other side. It says, but they will be the welcoming team wagon for us when we cross over. And those that you will probably see first will be the members of your soul group. And you will also have members of your soul group here in the 3rd density moving forward, even if you don't know them right now. He says, so when this happens, the soul groups come together, and it won't matter if you're in a different part of the world. And when you move into the 4th, they will all come together. It's like a jump room, he said. No matter where they are, when the 3rd strand of DNA turns on and we physically move into the 4th, soul groups come together, and you will move forward at that point, and you will see people that you will remember at that point that you've never met in this lifetime. Or let's say there's people in your life right now that you can't stand, but they're part of your soul group. He says all that bullshit will fall away because you will understand everyone has been playing a role. It reminds me when he said that of the movie Tomorrowland, and I know it's a Disney, but there's the part where they touch the little pin, basically at the end. So all these recruiters go out and they leave the pin for all the artists and all the dreamers. And when they touch the pin, they're automatically transported into that new dimension. And it's like a soul group, and they find each other. And I just cry at the end of that movie because it's like, oh my God, we're home. We're finally home. So that's what I imagine it to be. He says, also my understanding is it's the same when we jump from 4th into 5th. He said, soul groups all come together, and on the other side, members of your soul group in the 5th will be there, And we will have a recognition and acknowledgement because we're all one anyway. He says we always have a symbiotic relationship with the dimensions. Ember. She wants to say hello. Say hello. So he says we have a symbiotic relationship with the dimensions higher than where we are right now. Because we're all connected. We are all connected. He says, and you know, we all have the same vibrations. So I just keep imagining that day where we finally take that advance and we finally take that jump. And man, I'm telling you, there's going to be a relief, and I'm going to fall to my knees and I'm going to cry in joy that we finally made it, Like, I'm going to have a breakdown, but it's going to be a happy breakdown. So it'll be great. I can't wait. Second question, what happens to the people that have been abducted or have had soul harvesting and have had some sort of implants from grays or reptilians? When it comes to the shift to 5D, are they going to be dealing with the AI that is still active? And Alex's answer to that was, my understanding is no. And it's a really good question. It's interesting that you asked that question. He said that information that came up in the last contact, he said that's information that came up, I guess, from his previous contact with his Andromedan contacts. How fortuitous is that? He said, isn't the universe amazing? He said, my understanding is that any soul harvesting that has occurred when there's a jump, all those souls, regardless of where they are, will be drawn to the soul group, to the original soul groups, and move into the fourth. He says, so literally the dark side has gained nothing. He said, these souls will no longer be captured. They will be freed. And the reason for that is that the technology that's used to entrap the soul, even though it's a spiritual frequency, he says it's a third to lower fourth. That's it. When our third strand of DNA is turned on, it's a universal thing. And when that fourth strand is turned on, the vibration of all souls goes to middle to higher fourth. Because remember, he says, your journey is to the fifth for most of us. The technology will no longer work and the soul will be released. The soul will automatically be called to its own soul group as we jump into the fourth. He says, it's just amazing how this all works. He said, God is great, guys. He says, whatever you call it, the presence, the isness, the great spirit, creator, there's all this redundancy to make sure that all the broken pieces find their way home. I love that saying. He says it's amazing, absolutely amazing. It's like the analogy that even a sparrow is looked after. You know, we can look at ourselves as sparrows. We're all being looked after. And you know, this journey into the fourth from the third, we all have to remember this. This is about healing the process path that we are on, going from third to fourth to fifth. Wherever some of you who have a higher frequency than that, maybe sixth, seventh, or eighth, whenever or wherever you are at that frequency scale, he says, this is all about a healing path. It's about coming here and having the shit kicked out of you and then going back up through the healing process. back up in frequency to where our individual homes are, where our soul groups are on a specific frequency. So if you can't view this in any other way, he says, see this as not only a spiritual, but a healing path, an adventure, because that's what it is. When we jump into fourth, all that crap we've been through, we will be able to look at it and see it objectively with a much greater understanding than what we have now, because we're no longer going to be attached to the energy. So we will see it in a completely different way. And that reminds me, because I remember reading something or seeing a video about people ask the question about ghosts, like, will there still be ghosts? And no, there won't be, because those energies of those beings, those people that have been bound here for so long by this AI, okay, they're going to be released as well. They won't be here. They'll be able to go home to source as well. And that's just so relieving, you know. Next question. During your last webinar, you briefly alluded to the Magdalene Bloodline was off-world. Will you or can you elaborate on this more? He says, I can't, but I will tell you that information will be coming very soon. There is a group directly connected to that bloodline that will be coming forward with that information. And that information will be coming from two groups working together. One is in the south of France and one is in North Scotland. It says they are working together to introduce this particular piece to humanity, because Rome, which encompasses the Caesars, the Vatican, the Catholic religion, he says Rome, like everything else on this planet, has been totally twisted inside and out. And the truth regarding who that person was and many of the other sages that were alive at the time. It was a turning point for humanity in a lot of ways. He says it's just that information has been withheld or deleted. He said, for example, if anyone in the audience has an old set of Encyclopedia Britannicas from 1962 or earlier, he said the Encyclopedia Britannica after the Second Economical Council in Rome, which stated in 59 AD to 1962. If you're going to those, he says, if you go to those admitted that Apollonia of Septiona, okay, Apollonia Septiona saw a Tarsus was in fact all the apostles. He says they were all the same person. Wow. And after the Second Economical Council in Rome, all of the books were changed. So you will find that in the old Encyclopedia Britannica, he says it's things like that where the world was so busy focusing on the materialism that we weren't even on the materialism and everything going on, that sort of abandoned history. So it was done on purpose. It's also turned out to be a tragedy for humanity because we don't remember the way things were done, the operations, the psychological warfare of the past. We don't recognize it today, which is why we get hoodwinked into things, because we don't remember history and how things were done in the past. They keep doing the same thing and upgrading the technology, but the process of brainwashing and hoodwinking humanity is the same. It's just the technology has changed and we don't recognize that. So again, if you look up information, if you don't know about Tartaria, do some digging on that, because that was a reset point. Like, we had the technology, we had free energy, we had buildings. It's why you have all these wonderful, magnificent buildings throughout Europe, with the frequency resonances. What we think on top of these buildings is like a lightning rod is not a lightning rod. That is that's to gather the ether out of the air for energy. So, and all this says, we had a huge flood and these buildings were buried. They're finding buildings all over the world where they're digging and like digging down into the dirt, and there's buildings underneath. Like, it's just crazy how much history has been lost to us. He says, for example, we have a media that lied about Trump, they lied about Russian collusion, and they lied about Obama. They've lied about everything. They've lied about Khufu. They've lied about the, what. They've lied about everything. He says now they want you to believe Russia's losing the war in Ukraine. Ha! If you know the water's poisoned, he says, why would you go back and drink it? It makes no sense to me, but just out here, he says, just out here walking Merlin, which is his little dog. He says, I run across people and I'm just like, you're an idiot, he says. I don't say that out loud to them, he says, but because they're neighbors. And he says, but I'm damn well thinking it. I think that every time I go into town, every time I go to work, I work with people like this. And I'm just like, where in the world have you been for the last 2 years? Like, I don't get it. I just don't understand how you don't understand what's going on right now in the world. I don't get it. He says, why would you listen to this after all the bullshit that they've fed us the last 5 years? Oh my God, he said. The saying that you can't pick stupid, he says, is true. He says, if you're not stupid, you can make different choices. You can research. He says, nothing the media says is true. At this point, I don't even trust it for the weather. Because he was talking about how he's got several applications on his phone for the weather. And like one says it's going to be, this, and then he goes to the next one and it says something completely different, and they all say completely different things. So he can't even trust that. Next question. This person asks, I've had 4 large beings around me since I was a child. They wore maroon hooded cloaks, and recently I've been shown they are big lion beings. Are you able to share knowledge about these lion beings, and also any info you may have on dragons? And Alex's question is, I don't have any information regarding the feline races. He says it's not one that ever came up and not one that's ever been a focus with Morane or Viseus's input. And maybe it's only because of who I am that my soul paths don't cross with those races. He said, I don't know. It's never something that's come up. I know that there's many people that have had experiences with the feline beings, and I understand they're remarkable and extremely loving. Oh, I just got goosebumps. And you definitely don't want to cross them because they're extremely protective, and they will do a number on you very, very quickly, he says. Which I don't know if any of you follow James Gilliland. He's with this SETI Ranch, and he talks a lot about the feline beings. I believe I'm somehow involved with feline beings. I've had cats all my life, and I had an astral travel. Like I said one time, I don't know if you've watched my other videos, but I had an astral travel where I was in a field, reminded me of Ireland. I don't know, it was like just a field of rolling hills and just green grass. And I was there in the fields, and this huge male lion came running towards me, and there were two cubs. And I just remember, like, they were like my family. They were my family, and I was hugging them, and I could literally feel the coarseness of that mane in his fur. And I just felt so comfortable and at home and loving. And that was like the best feeling I had when I woke up from that. It was great. So somehow I think I'm involved with that. I just don't know for sure. He says, as far as the dragons, there's quite a bit of mythology regarding the dragons and their relationship to the reptilian races. He says, I think many of the legends of the dragons is connected to a benevolent race of Sikar. But at the moment, he says, that's all I have, which isn't much. I admit that. He says, you know who would know a lot about dragons, and we've had a short conversation about that, and that would be Michael Jaco. So I don't know if any of you follow Michael Jaco. He is a Navy SEAL who has his own YouTube channel. Has his own page, talks a lot about things going on as well. He says he has a lot of information on dragons, and he says, to my understanding, is he's experienced them up close and personal. Another person that has a lot of experience with dragons is Joanne Dunn, and she's with Pyramid Journey through Ascension. She talks a lot about dragons and knows a lot about dragons as well. She does have her YouTube channel as well. Next question. If the moon is artificial, does what we learned in school and how the tides affect our bodies, which are mostly water, still hold true? If so, how does that work? And his answer is it's energy. He says gravity is energy. He says when you pull a frequency away from someone, it creates an imbalance in your physical frequency, and it doesn't affect everyone this way, but a fair amount it does affect. Which, when he said that, my jaw dropped, because I heard something a while ago about them slowly pulling the moon away from us. And I started wondering many years ago, probably 5 to 7 years ago, because I was in my middle 40s. And for women, I worked with girls in their early 20s, and they were all having monthly period issues where you would either have 2 or 3 in a month, or you would go for months without having one. And I'm like, something is off. Like, if the moon does affect women in this way, why? I'm thinking maybe I'm going through early menopause, something like that. And to hear younger girls going through this same thing, it was just so strange to me. I'm like, there's definitely something going on with this moon. Okay. And if you don't know, there was a time on this planet where we didn't have a moon at all. Do some research on that. So I found that very fascinating, that he talks about the imbalance in your physical body as that energy is being pulled from us. He says it completely throws their energy field out of balance, which is why on full moons, any police officer will tell you people lose it a little bit. Crime goes up, and violent crime and things of that nature. He says, regarding the moon, for those of you who do tarot cards, and all of that astrology, he says, when we get to 4D, he said, none of that's going to work. None of that will be relative whatsoever to those of you who are of that belief system. And I've said this before, I've been right my whole life. I have been right for things that I have not followed. I have tarot decks, like I have 3 of them, okay? I have an Egyptian one, I have the Animal Totem one, and I have the Game of Thrones one. They're beautiful cards. And I've had tarot readings done on me before. None of it has come true. They are tools, and some people are really good at it. Like there are people who are really good at it and they know how to read it. I've never been into that. I have rune stones, which I like a little bit better, but if I need a tool, like I have a pendulum, and I think the pendulum for me works the best because it goes off your energetic field. But yeah, like when he said that too, that stuff, astrology and all that, like at one point I wanted to really get into astrology, and I just never could. There was just something that wasn't pushing me to get into that. And when he said that, I was like, that's why I haven't been drawn to that, because it's just not going to work where we're going. He says, we're going to have a whole new game in the 4th density. He says it's not like this here at all. So next question. They say, when we are spending time on starships at night, mentoring, will we remember anything? How will we know if we're starseeds? His answer to that is, well, at some point you'll remember it all. You will remember everything that was taught, everything that you need to remember. He said you will specifically remember places, places you need to be, roles you need to play in this transition from 3rd into 4th. He says, now I have said this for years, and I'm going to say this one more time for nausea. This is a really, really big deal. He says the fact that you are here from the future is not an accident. For whatever your reasons were for coming here at this particular time. He says, we all agree to be here for this particular time and assisting not only humanity itself, this genetic DNA legacy, or to help humanity itself to, the DNA legacy out of 3rd into 4th and into 5th. He says, wherever its future is after that, he says, it's a mission. We're all on a mission, you guys. We're all on a mission. So it's a really, really big deal that we are here at this time to anchor our light. Your light is so important, okay? Your light is important and we need it, okay? We need you. He says it's something we're all here to do, and by us working on ourselves and making that transition, we ensure that the bloodlines here, this 22 genetic royal bloodline, makes it. He says, now, when you accompany that with taking the earth into 5th, which apparently is a huge, huge deal, he says, that may be more important than anything we can imagine at this point is her presence of her back in the 5th dimension. Her presence back in the 5th. He said it twice. That creates a healing. That creates a resetting of all the dimensions from 6th and below. He said, I just gave it to you. That's what it's all about. Next question. Can you speak about the hexagon portal on top of Saturn yet? His question, or his answer was, no, but I want to. He said, let me just say this. On Saturn, there was equipment that was placed there by benevolence very, very long time ago that was captured, and then it flipped to you have to understand, he says, there are many different uses for AI. He says to monitor, to heal, to restructure, to program in a benevolent way, or to be used in a nefarious and dark way. So AI can be good, but it can also be very bad. Next question. Would you please tell what are starseeds that are walk-ins and the different ways they walk back out? His answer is, my understanding is that when a starseed walks in, they are committed to the journey. If there was an occasion to where that starseed needed to return back to the point of origin, he said, then another starseed would have to come in. He says you would not take a non-starseed and put it into a body that's already had a starseed frequency in it or consciousness, because it's not a frequency match. He said you just simply wouldn't do it. It would be completely unethical. So when a starseed walks in, and it's usually due to trauma or a near-death experience, those are the most common. The starseed is committed to that body until the body's expiration date. If that soul has to leave, then another starseed would have to volunteer to walk in and finish that body's path or journey until its expiration date. He said, that's what I know. Question. With the New York Times now confirming the Hunter Biden grand jury impairment, in fact, if it's in fact he's indicted, what in fact could we expect next? Could it force resignation or force conflicts of interest with Ukraine against Pedo Joe? His answer to that is, well, I think in the history of the United States, he says there's never been a president or someone pretending to be president arrested for bribery, fraud, pedophilia, ever. He said, while in office or pretend in office, so that may very well happen here in very short order, except they'll either have to go to the movie studios in Georgia outside Atlanta or Culver City and arrest the fake president there, because he's not in the White House in DC. It's been interesting, and it's going to get a whole lot more interesting, folks. He says, for those of us Americans, we are going to be confronted with a huge embarrassment. And that is how corrupt our government has been and how we've completely ignored or been completely ignorant, and just how bad it's been, and the things that have been done around the world in our name have been absolutely atrocious, and we're going to have to own it. And it's going to be a very difficult time here in the United States. He says a lot of people are going to be really pissed off. He said, I read there was a gun show somewhere, and there were military people on leave that were at these gun shows buying body armor for themselves. These were officers, and when they were asked why the military wasn't buying it, and they basically said, because of what's going to happen. What's going to happen here soon, basically. And the gun dealer was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, the American people are about to find out how they've been fucked over, and they're really going to be pissed. It's coming. And that's why they are buying body armor. There is more going on in the background, he says, than what we see on the surface. As long as the fake media can continue to give you fake stories about all this other nonsense, then you're going to be distracted. If you're paying attention to it, it's going to be something, he said. He said, Jim Willie did a very good interview. He's a guy that talks about monetary things, stock market, all that, gold, silver. He said he did a very good interview. He says, I cannot remember what his name was, the other person who interviewed him. He couldn't remember his name, about the dollar. He says, even if you live in Europe, it would be important to note and watch. Jim Willie's a really good source for this information about the dollar, he said. He says, and the ramifications of the Federal Reserve note being removed from circulation because of what it represents and its fiat. And it's the cornerstone of everything, of drug trafficking, bribery, embezzlement, murder, pedophilia, human trafficking, organ harvesting, all of it. He says it's the cornerstone of all that's happening. He says, and when that's all taken down, when our monetary system is taken down, all the contracts in the world, including oil, every contract internationally that's based on the US dollar, Federal Reserve note, will all have to be rewritten, excluding US dollar for what's next. Or the US, I'm not sure. Anyway, he says, so it's worth paying attention to because it's going to cause a financial earthquake that we have not experienced since the 1830s. He says, it's going to be an interesting ride. He says, but we'll get through it. He says, we always do. We're very resourceful. What it means is changing our perspective and moving on to the next thing, not holding on to the past. There are some things we just need to let go of so that we can move forward. There are no victims here. He said a lot of things are being disclosed. And it's just like the 11th hour poem. If you go back to my very first video, the 11th hour, that is a prophecy about how things are changing. The river is basically running so fast that there's going to be people who are trying to cling on to the edge because they just don't want to let go. And you just need to let go. You just need to let go and just go with the flow. Go with the flow of the river. Okay. See who else is in there with you. Says everything is being telegraphed as much as possible, not on the mainstream media because they're lying sons of bitches, he said. But alternative media, he said, everything is being telegraphed. They're telling what is coming and to prepare yourselves for the changes, but the changes are good. You may not think so in the moment, he says, but in the long run, they're absolutely good. And they will create a very stable relationship with humanity, with nature, with economics for the world for maybe 1,000 years, he said. It's all positive. He says, this is all change that should have happened hundreds of years ago, but now it's happening, and it's happening because of Space Force. Space Force went out, had some conversations, he says, from different advanced beings. Information was shared, both in present time and the future, and said, look, if you don't make this change, this is what's going to happen to your race. He says, I've addressed this years ago as well. Now it's happening, okay? He says a lot of people are on board. Even black cats are now trying to flip because they realize they were misled. They were blackmailed into what they were doing, whatever their particular situations. They now understand that the future of their family, their bloodlines, all of that all depends on these things occurring and changes being made. And that's where we are. We are literally on the threshold of everything changing. Okay. Next question. Jesus and Lucifer are referred to as the morning star. Why? Alex's answer to that is, like I've said, we don't know the full story. Not by any, he says, do we? We don't know the full story, do we? Not by any stretch of the imagination. The history of our planet has been so muddled. He says, if you've read the book, The Gods of Eden by William Brambley, he says he makes a reference and has very good notes in his bibliography in the back where ancient texts refer to Enki losing an argument. So Enki losing an argument with his brother Enlil, and Enlil basically trashed his brother, and because he lost a position, that Enki is supposedly Lucifer. He says it's all been garbled, and no one can deal with that information and lay it out in a very specific way than our guys in the Space Force. And there's a reason I'm passing the baton to them. He says, because I've tried to address this years and years ago, and it just didn't go well for me. He says, I don't want to be any more specific, or he didn't want any more specific death threats. He says, so I'm not going to go anywhere near that subject again. He says, but that's information that will be coming forward, including what I've shared with you in previous questions about the bloodlines in France and North Scotland regarding the bloodlines of Mary Magdalene. He says, remember, the bloodline always follows the mother. Doesn't follow the father, it follows the mother. Next question. Can you talk about Lucifer and what that really is? Is the story of him being the son of a queen of Orion Empire really true? See, a lot of this information I didn't know. It just depends on the questions asked, okay? And Alex's answer to this was, my understanding is that word is a title. Example, the word Yahweh, the New Testament is a title. It means king. So Yahweh means king. He says, how do I know that? Ask the Palladians, okay? Their specific leadership of their councils are known as Yahwehs, kings. So it's a title, he says. Most of the Old Testament is the history of the Sumerian and Chaldean people that was borrowed. Specific things were changed and altered in order to give validity to a group of gypsies. He says, I've talked about this in the past. Now, how it would relate to Enki, my understanding is that Enki's birth roots go to Sirius, the dog star. He married an Anunnaki princess, but those are political marriages. He says those things happen. Some turn out great, and some of them actually turn out to like each other. He says they fell in love and they're capable of remarkable things, he said. So we've heard of that in our own history, in our own kingdoms. Political marriages between kingdoms, as above, so below. I don't want to get into that because it's very deep, and a lot of that information is already out there if you look for it, he said. Next question. Previously, you mentioned the 3-day period of no defenses as a possible time when remaining dark forces could be possibly removed in a military style effort. Any new information on that as a possibility? His answer is nothing that I would add or detract. He says, you know, there are things going on right now. You just don't hear about it. The Marines are very, very busy. And in fact, the last few days, if you watch Monkey Works, there is a ton, was it 600, 650 military planes just in the air in the US alone? Insane amounts of activity going on. He says SEAL teams are very, very busy here in the country and overseas as well. He says the takedown has already begun. Next question. What do you know about black goo, programmable matter, smart dust? Is this the substance that's been renamed graphene oxide found in the... his answer is no, they are not the same. He says, I and others have talked about the black goo in previous webinars. It was discovered in some ancient underground facilities. It's been discovered in some tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs and other archaeological finds we have not been told about. It was an issue in the Falkland Wars off the coast of Argentina between the British. He says that information is out there. He says, but graphene oxide is not the same. This black goo is also in the dark night satellite that patrols above the Earth and is used as an observation satellite in our solar system. It's funny because, not kind of funny, but like go back and watch the X-Files from, what is it, late 80s to early 90s, or somewhere in the 90s, like talks about all this stuff, like all this stuff. And I knew back then, I was like, that's real. That is real. All the black goo. Go back and watch the X-Files. Next question. Is it true negative energy collected from Earth is transmitted to a black cube on Saturn's surface to a black star at the center of the galaxy? Alex's answer to that is, I've heard that rumor. He says, I don't know if it's true. He said, I simply don't know. But since we're talking about energy, he said, ladies and gentlemen, Nikola Tesla was absolutely brilliant. He said the Earth herself, every single minute, produces 47 trillion volts of electricity. Every minute, 47 trillion volts. He says that's 1,000,000 times more than what humanity would ever need. And it's free. All we have to do is tap into it, to build the technology and tap into it. He says, instead, we're paying for it. He says it's nuts. Again, this is all part of the things we're going to have to look at and come to learn that there's been a lot of people who have written about the kingdom. He calls it Tartania, but I think he means Tartaria. That wasn't the only one. He says this concept of free energy goes back to Lemuria and using the Earth's resonance field for power. We have talked about the Mabadis, which is the flying carpet. He says, and how they would use the Earth's ley lines to power these devices. This is a past webinar that he talked about these. He says, history is going to make a huge comeback. They intentionally made it boring so none of us would look back to know where we've been and who our forefathers were and what they were about, so that we could be more controlled and manipulated in the present. He says a lot of this information is available through Telegram. He had some channels for people. He said there's one called Easy Physics on Telegram. There's one called Forbidden Science, Quantum Health. There's one called Source Frequency. I have a Telegram page. It's called The Awakened Species. So there's a lot of good information on that one too. And then he talks about the Knights of Terra, which is a community page. I couldn't find it on Telegram anywhere. And I did a search and I can't find it anywhere. So, but there's some place called Knights of Terra. So next question. Why has no one spoke of the dog race that has been on our planet? Is it the language barrier or some other reason? It's quite an extraordinary story and relationship to be ignored, as we know your pup would die for you. And if you like on that Awakened Species Telegram page, they show a lot of like, or icons. I like icons too. He's really good, Sarge. I love Sarge. He's great. He's great. There's pictures of people with dog heads. Okay, so there's a canine species out there that has lived on this planet. Alex's answer to that was, you're right about that. He said, domesticated animals are hardwired for human speech. He says, in the case with dogs, it's different. You really have to pay attention. As they do mannerisms or they'll communicate with body language. He says, I've had many dogs and they've all done it. He says, I will have to admit that Merlin, his dog now, is the smartest dog I've ever known. He really is. He says, he's managing me now. He says, he damn well tries. And he laughed. He says he does it with body language and eye contact. He says he will look me straight in the eye and then look out at the window. Or he'll turn around and look at his leash. If his water bowl is empty, he will come and look directly at my water bottle. That's how I know. I'll walk into the kitchen and look at his bowl, and sure enough, his bowl is really low, or a piece of food is floating in it, and he doesn't want to drink from it. So all I have to do is pay attention, and animals communicate. Says cats are the same way. Tricky thing about cats is their aloofness. He says they can be extremely aloof, and they come in, most of them, very loving, but they think they're in control and they think they're in charge. So once you get past that attitude with cats, you can figure them out mostly, he said. Animals are great. Horses, birds, they all communicate in their own way. We just have to pay attention. He says they are definitely hardwired for human speech. They learn what we mean when we talk to them. They have a greater understanding than we might realize. Yeah, I've had cats my whole life, so I kind of know. I can read them. I have 2 Alaskan Malamutes, and I can read them. I know when they want something. You just learn after being with them, since they're little, that you just learn their personalities and you learn how to read them. Next question. If in the ET world there's no such thing as time, how do they meet up or make appointments with each other? And his answer to that is, that's an excellent question. And clarification is deserved, he says. When you look at our reality, virtually everything is based on time. What time do we get? Oh, What time do we get to go to sleep? What time is it that we can eat? What time do we have to pick up the kids, go to school? He says everything revolves around time. We celebrate our planet with one rotation around the sun. He says that's a year. We celebrate birthdays. However, our entire concept of our birthday is way off. He says everything revolves around time. Outside of this third dimensional realm, he says fourth and fifth. In the fourth and fifth, time is not a basis for civilization or for anything. Have you ever heard of the expression of Indian time? It says they're in the moment. They focus on the moment. They know when the sun goes down, whatever time that is. They try to be close to their tribe, to their village. When the sun comes up, they know it's time to go forage or to hunt or to educate their children. There is no 1 o'clock. None of that existed. They were in the moment, and their life was not based on time. That's what the other star nations experience. It's all based on the experience and being in the moment, however long it takes. They don't give themselves 30, 45 minutes to accomplish something. They do it until it's done. And they've gained all the experience from it. I talked about this before. Wouldn't that be so great? Oh my gosh, to not have to wake up to an alarm clock, not have to watch your watch, just being able to live your life. Like when you're tired, you go to sleep. When you're not tired, your body wakes up and you can just go, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my friend today, sit by the lake, or let's go to the beach, and just fulfill that experience and not have to worry about time. God, that's going to be great. He says, example. He says, it's the Andromedan's perspective, and I said it before, he says that your true physical, genuine birthday would be when every cell in your body renews itself. So, which is approximately every 7 years, 3 months. He says that to them would be a birthday, not the sun's rotation around the planet, because if you're focusing on that, you're literally telling your body it's aging faster, okay? He says, so when in fact, it's every 7 years, 3 months equals 1 year, should equal 1 year. He says, take your age now and divide it by 7.3, and that is your actual age off-world. Wow, we'd be pretty young. He says, so you'd still be a spring chicken. Maybe with not as much spring, but certainly the chicken. He says, it's all how you look at things. We've been trapped. Basically, we've been trapped into like, oh, when's my favorite soap opera on, etc. We've trapped ourselves into a loop of time. Okay. A couple more questions. We're almost done. Next question. Is there a way we can protect ourselves from malevolent beings reading our thoughts telepathically? And his answer to this is, if you can be in a space of balance, calm, and love, he says they won't want anything to do with you because they will literally be repelled by your high frequency. What they thrive on is someone who is stressing out, freaking out all the time, emotionally a wreck all the time. They can feed off that. That's a smorgasbord, he said, for these beings. But if you're calm, content, solid on the inside with who you are, who you like and you like and love yourself, says projecting wholeness and compassion for others, you will repel them. They won't come after you. That's why they target the kids, because the kids mimic what's going on with the parents. They become mirrors of us, and many of us don't know that. He says the sins of the mother and father are passed on to the children through behavior, and that's what they know, and then they teach that to their own children. He says, but we're all in this healing curve now. And if you've ever watched ghost shows, I used to watch them all the time, and they would talk about how these dark entities attach themselves through generations. So once that person like that had the attachment passes on, it can pass on to the children. So when he talks about this, it makes perfect sense. So the only way you can really break that with them not feeding on you is to just be in that positive, calming, unconditional loving space. Yeah, like the more you tell the truth, the more your light shines, the more you love, like the more your light shines, and they hate it. They hate it. And he says, and all of that will go away and the slate will be wiped clean. He says, from a great deal of trauma, of suffering and pain, he says it can't come soon enough. He says physically the med beds and all those technologies which have been suppressed will assist with that, at least on the physical level. He says the med beds won't work 100% if someone is an emotional disaster and they choose not to change. They will just get physically sick again. He says, but eventually they will get it. It will sink in what's happening, and you have to allow these people space to discover that themselves, even through you as a friend, have told them many times. Once they've heard it inside themselves, then they'll get it. Everyone is on their own journey, okay? I have people in my family, I have people I work with that, like I said, just don't get it, okay? And until they hear it inside, yeah, nothing's going to help them. They have to learn it for themselves. We just have to step back from them. He says, but until then, you just have to let them be who they are and love them unconditionally, but at a distance. He says, sometimes that's the only way, from a distance, until they get their shit together. Okay, and I think I have one last question. Question, have the Andromedans ever explained anything about the ancient builder races that colonized planets and moons in our solar system millions of years ago? His answer to that is, you're referring to the founders. He says that information, whatever information they've shared with me, he says, I've shared with you. I know there's more, he says. I don't know how much they know. He says, I do know the founders that created the fourth dimension also did fifth and third. I mean, create the physicality. He says, they didn't create the dimensions. He says, Source did that, and only Source could do that. He says, the wormholes between dimensions, quasars, black holes, all of that was done by the founders. No one else knows how to do that. So they had real expertise. He says, but that's all I know. The rest is a mystery to me. He says, other than that, the fact that they exist, he said, the A's refer to them as the Patal, or 11th density beings. Now, what we call the hologram of our universe was first created. Source did not start at the bottom. Source started at the top frequency closest to it, and then pushed it out from itself, and then separated itself so it could look at it objectively, is what's been explained to me, or what they think And then 10th, 9th, 8th. He says, the further it got from source, the denser it became. And here we are. And then we had this crew, this team that did stuff. Maybe they worked at creating other universes and physicality. And he enlisted them to come in here and do the same thing after the dimensions had been created. And that's what they did. They came in and created the densities. That in order to do this, they had to be able to lower their scale of frequencies so they could operate in all these densities. He said, so they themselves are absolutely remarkable beings. He says, to be able to do all of this, and then the whole thing about how the souls migrated into all the dimensions is not a piece I have, he says. How that all started, I don't have that piece. He says, that's what I have in the Cliff Notes version. Okay. There's so much more to us. He says, some of us are Patal. He says, the Blue Brain Project proved that, although they didn't realize or still don't know it. He says, but when they were able to go into someone's brain structure and see 11th density structures inside their brains, he says, not everyone had it, but those that had 11D structures are Patal. So, all right, that is the end of it. There are a few other questions, but the majority of those were the best ones. So anyway, hopefully you got some more information out of that. Again, I suggest you support him if you get a chance to be on some of his live webinars. Yeah, either go to alexcollier.org or his Bright Eon page for that. And yeah, the man's just a load of information. I can talk to him forever. So anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to go sit outside in the sun for a little bit, get my vitamins. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and share. If you have questions, please email me at the email below. And we're going to get through this, guys. It's coming. And it, like I said, it might just be drip, drip, dripping, but we're going to hit a flood here real soon. I do believe that around Easter time, we've got about another 10, 11 days. I think we're going to see a lot happen. I really do. And I'm crossing my fingers that, man, I'm hoping. I'm just thinking of the future and not that a lot of us won't have to go to work for these corporations anymore. We can basically work for ourselves with the new system coming. So it's going to be fabulous. It's just getting there. That's the tough part. So, but I know we're going to get there, and I'm so excited. And hopefully all of my soul tribe, I want to give you all a hug, and we will get there together, and we will have a big old party on the other side, because I can't wait to dance again. I try to dance here, but like my neck, I can't. I get headaches. I can't with the issues in my back and my neck. So I just can't wait to go home and have a great big party with all of you. So I love you all. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you hopefully next week. Bye.